It began, as most legends do, with a sound no one could explain. On an October night in 1899, high in the Colorado mountains, the mining town of Whitlock was preparing to disappear from the map. The gold had run dry, the railroad had moved on, and its people were packing up, ready to leave behind the dust and the echoes of pickaxes that once struck deep into the red earth. The last train whistle had already sounded down in Silverton, and by winter, Whitlock was supposed to be a ghost town like the hundreds that dotted the Rockies. But what happened instead made it the strangest story in American history. A month after that last train left, every man, woman, and child in Whitlock vanished. No bodies, no footprints, no signs of struggle. A team of railroad surveyors, sent to check the abandoned line in early 1900, found the town eerily intact. Coffee cups sat half-filled on tables. The blacksmith's forge still glowed faintly with dying embers. Laundry hung stiff and dry on the lines, unmoved by the wind. And in the town square, the bell rope of the little white church swayed back and forth, though no one stood beneath it. It was as if time itself had stopped breathing. The disappearance of Whitlock became an unsolved riddle of the new century, whispered in mining camps and printed in sensational papers, then forgotten as the world moved on to wars, telephones, and electricity. Yet deep in those mountains, the town waited. When a team of geologists rediscovered the site in 2001, they expected ruins. Instead, they found Whitlock almost perfectly preserved. Not just the buildings, but the people. Inside the old general store, behind the counter, stood a man in an apron with his eyes closed, skin pale but intact, as if he were simply asleep on his feet. In the sheriff's office, a uniformed man sat slumped in a rocking chair, fingers still curled around a tin mug. Dozens of others were found frozen mid-motion, walking, eating, reading. And though their clothes were over a century old, the fabric had not frayed, the colors had not faded. When the scientists ran tests on the tissue of one sleeping subject, it showed signs of life. Oxygen still faintly bound to blood cells, cells metabolically paused but not dead. The finding was beyond anything known to modern science. The press called it the sleeping town. The government called it classified. Within months, the site was sealed, its coordinates removed from public records, and official statements spoke vaguely of environmental instability. But those who had seen Whitlock before it vanished behind fences told different stories. They said their watches stopped the moment they entered the town. They said sound felt thick in the air, as though time itself were muffled. One geologist swore her hair had grown half an inch during a single afternoon there. Another said he heard faint laughter echoing from the empty saloon, a ghostly chorus repeating words he couldn't understand. When the data from their instruments came back, all magnetic readings showed impossible fluctuations, as if the Earth's field bent in circles around the town. Then, as if the mystery weren't deep enough, something else surfaced. In 2015, an old set of VHS tapes appeared in an online auction labeled Whitlock Survey 1983. The footage was grainy, the sound warped by age, but what it showed was unmistakable. The same frozen figures, in the same positions decades before the 2001 discovery. The man behind the counter, the sheriff in his chair, the woman holding a broom mid-stroke, all identical. Time had not touched them. Experts confirmed the tapes were genuine. Somehow, Whitlock had been paused for at least 40 years before anyone officially rediscovered it. Dr. Nora Levin, a physicist from Caltech, was granted access in 2018 under a quiet Department of Energy contract. Her team used magnetic resonance imaging to scan one of the preserved miners, identified later as Elias Hart, born 1868. Against every expectation, his brain emitted faint neural waves, slow and rhythmic, like the pulse of someone dreaming deeply. "It isn't death," she wrote in her first report. "It's not life either. It's a state we have no word for." 2 days after submitting her findings, her report was sealed under national security restrictions. She was reassigned, and her colleagues stopped returning calls. But a year later, during an obscure science podcast interview, she said something the government couldn't erase. "Whitlock didn't die," she said softly. "It paused. And if it paused, it can unpause." That line became infamous after what happened next. In the summer of 2022, wildfires tore through the San Juan Mountains, burning everything in their path. But when the smoke cleared, satellite images showed a perfect circle, half a mile wide, of untouched forest. At its center, the ruins of Whitlock stood exactly as before. Firefighters who reached the area reported something stranger. The bodies were gone. Every single one of them. The town was empty again. But in the ash and dirt surrounding the streets, search teams found footprints, hundreds of them, leading away into the wilderness. Analysis of the skin cells left in those prints revealed isotopic signatures consistent with pre-industrial human biology. Whoever had walked out of Whitlock had lived in the 19th century. Somehow, the townspeople had awakened and walked away.
For weeks, the story leaked in fragments. A trucker outside Durango claimed to have picked up a pale, confused woman in a blue dress who said her name was Eliza May and that she was looking for her husband, the blacksmith. At a gas station 30 miles later, security footage showed her talking on a payphone and then vanishing between frames. Not walking away, not running, just gone, as if someone had cut her from the film of the world. In nearby towns, hikers reported seeing lantern lights moving along ridgelines where no trails existed. Others swore they heard a distant train whistle echoing from a valley where no rails had been laid for a century. A ham radio operator in Utah intercepted a strange Morse code signal repeating for 3 days straight. When translated, it said only, "Whitlock is awake." Then the signal died. By 2023, the area was officially reclassified as a restricted environmental study zone. Satellite images were blurred in public databases, but researchers in the underground corners of the internet, those who trade forbidden data for curiosity's sake, noticed something odd in the magnetic readings. Every night at 3:17 a.m., the field over Whitlock oscillated, matching the rhythm of human delta wave sleep patterns. It was as if the town itself was dreaming. That's when one of Dr. Levin's former assistants, posting under a pseudonym on a forgotten physics forum, wrote a single encrypted message before the thread was deleted. The Whitlock field matched no known frequency, it said. It oscillated between two temporal states, one past, one present. The resonance was human. It wasn't a trap, it was synchronization. If that's true, then the people of Whitlock weren't frozen at all. They were caught in synchronization, existing in two moments at once, flickering between centuries like a song skipping between verses. Maybe when the balance shifted, when the wildfire or some cosmic accident disturbed the rhythm, they slipped back fully into their own time, or into ours. Maybe they're still flickering somewhere in between, walking unseen beside the living. In the small towns around the mountains, people still whisper about strangers on the roads at dusk, people who speak in old accents, who don't understand cars or phones, who ask what year it is and who the President McKinley now might be. They vanish before sunrise. Today, Whitlock no longer appears on any map, though pilots sometimes glimpse its outline on clear days, the church steeple casting a perfect shadow in the morning sun, the streets laid out in neat lines like a memory pressed into the earth. The air above it, they say, shimmers faintly, as though heat were rising from the ground, even in winter. Some claim to have seen movement through telescopic lenses, a flicker of figures walking, the glint of glass in a window, a train whistle echoing across a valley where no tracks remain. And those who live nearby say that when the wind is just right, you can hear faint laughter, the clinking of glasses, the rustle of a newspaper being folded, sounds of a town still alive in another layer of time. If you ever hike that far into the San Juans and camp near the old Whitlock Ridge, don't be surprised if you wake in the middle of the night and see lights moving through the trees, warm, golden lights like lanterns. Some say if you follow them, you'll find the town, fresh as morning, smoke rising from chimneys, the smell of bread in the air. People will wave to you, smile, and ask if you've come on the new train from Durango. But whatever you do, don't blink, because the moment you do, everything around you will fade. The lights, the streets, the people, and you'll be standing alone in the dark, the mountain wind cold against your face. And somewhere in that darkness, if you listen closely, you'll hear the distant whistle again, calling you back to a place that shouldn't exist. Somewhere, high above the mist, Whitlock, Colorado is still waiting, caught forever between centuries, between waking and dreaming, its people suspended in the thin silence between one heartbeat and the next. And every few decades, when time forgets itself, it stirs again. Because Whitlock never truly vanished, it only fell asleep.